Middle Colonies. The Middle Colonies have a long and diverse history, and they were an important colonial region. The region contains New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. It spans the northwestern region of the United States. The Middle Colonies were the best of both worlds. The region had large and protected natural harbors, like in New England, where shipping and trading was popular. There were also many pine forests throughout Pennsylvania and Delaware. For this reason, logging was a big industry, as well as shipbuilding. However, like in the southern colonies, there were also many coastal plains that made it a great place for farming. It had much longer rainy and growing seasons than New England, but it was not quite hot enough to produce the cash crops that were present in the south. Farther inland, there were many hills. Mountains marked the western border of the region. Long and wide rivers were used to ship goods throughout the colonies themselves. The crops that grew best in the Middle Colonies were grains, including corn, wheat, and rye. This was their cash crop. Their grain was so plentiful that the Middle Colonies became the main supplier of grain throughout the British Empire, and the grain was exported to British colonies all around the world and to England. For this reason, the Middle Colonies were known as the breadbasket colonies. The two main port cities were Philadelphia and New York. One thing that made them large shipping ports was because they laid on two big rivers, the Delaware and the Hudson, respectively. They are still busy ports today. Extra grain and food grown by farmers would be shipped to one of those cities, where merchants would sell them to other places or process them in mills. For the most part, the people of the Middle Colonies ate what they grew on the farms or hunted in the forests until the early 1700s, when they finally started to import goods from England. Imports included tea, chocolate, fabrics, and books. The main industries were textiles and paper production. There was also a lot of logging and shipbuilding, as it was much cheaper to build a ship in Philadelphia than in England. The colonists also took up the industries of mining and forging iron in New York and Pennsylvania in 1719. Coal was mined in New Jersey in the early 1700s as well. Artisans made money in the Middle Colonies too. These included coopers, who made barrels, cobblers, who made shoes, blacksmiths, millers, and silversmiths. Young boys sometimes got apprenticeships with these artisans in hopes to learn the craft and one day provide for their families. One notable detail about the Middle Colonies was the diversity between the people groups. There were English, Dutch, Swedish, German, Scots-Irish, and French colonists. Native Americans were also considered part of the community, and there were also some free Africans. A surprising 20 different languages were spoken throughout the region. 6 main religions were practiced as well. The Quakers, a spiritual religious group, settled in Pennsylvania in the late 1670s in search of religious freedom from England and later from the Puritans. They were founded by George Fox. The Quakers believed that all people were equals, no matter their race. They accept people of all religions in their communities, unlike most groups of the time. They believed that everyone possessed an inner light, which was a divine force. The name Quaker was given to them because they were said to quake when moved by the inner light. The Quakers practiced nonviolence. When Pennsylvania was founded in 1682, the Quaker values were embedded into the Pennsylvanian government. There was no military, very low taxes, and opportunity to run businesses for all. Philadelphia went on to be called the best poor man's country because anyone, including Africans and women could hold a business of their own and own a property. Indentured servants had more rights as well, and they began to come to Pennsylvania more frequently starting in the 1700s. John Green said it best: "While it's never good to be poor, it was much better to be poor in the colonies than it was in England or much of the rest of Europe, which is why people kept indenturing themselves to get here." The founding of New York is an interesting story. The land was originally owned by the Manhattan tribe when the first group of Dutch settlers landed on Manhattan Island in 1609. The Dutch purchased the entire island from the Manhattans for some trinkets, valued at only $24. They named the land New Amsterdam. Then, in 1664, 4 English ships arrived in New Amsterdam to try to claim the land for the crown. In 1665, they successfully captured it, renaming it New York. But the Dutch did not give up. After peacefully living with the British for 8 years, the Dutch recaptured New York City and renamed it again to New Orange. This recapture was short-lived, however, because a treaty was signed in 1674, transferring the colony back to English control along with the final name, New York. Though there was a degree of equality in Philadelphia, this was not the case in all of the middle colonies. Male dominance was all around and written into the laws. Almost all landowners were male. Men managed everything. They controlled the finances of their families and businesses, they could vote, and they could hold public office. Women in society had to obey the commands of the males. They were homemakers. Children usually started working at age 7. Girls learned to do housework, and boys either went to work for their father or became apprentices to artisans. The 4 middle colonies, which all became states between 1787 and 1788, were home to people of many backgrounds and religions, including Quakers, Lutherans, Presbyterians, and more. Though the people were from numerous different backgrounds, they were all successful in many different things, including shipping, logging, farming, and shaping the America we know today.